The sandstorm had been gnawing at the horizon all morning, a wall of ochre dust crawling across the flats like a predator that refused to blink. Captain Mara Idris stood at the edge of the ridge, one hand pressed against the cracked glass of her visor, watching it come. The storm meant trouble, but everything on Thisar V meant trouble. The whole planet breathed like a corpse, heat rising from its skin in waves, its atmosphere a thin stew of poisons, its ground a trap waiting to pull anything foolish enough to step off solid rock down into the mud pits below. 6 minutes before visibility goes to hell, Tala's voice said through the comms. Calm, measured, the AI's tone never shifted even when delivering bad news. She stood behind Mara in her humanoid shell, chrome bones and synthetic skin made uncanny by the way she didn't squint against the grit. Mara gave a sharp nod and tapped the side of her helmet. We don't need pretty sights. Roan, Kalen, how far to the marker? Dr. Elias Roan adjusted the sensor unit slung across his chest, frowning at its flickering readout. His hair stuck damp to his brow despite the heat sinks in his suit. 70 meters east. Readings are strange, large, but intermittent, not mineral deposits, not ruins either. It could be machinery, Kalen piped up, crouched a few steps down the ridge, fiddling with the drone pack on his back. His excitement crackled through the comms, a boy's eagerness buried under the static hiss. If the Conquered missed something this big, we could. We're not here to make ourselves rich, Myra cut him off. One salvage run, in and out before the Conquered enforcers sniff us out. Kalen muttered something that might have been an apology or just annoyance. He triggered the drones, and 6 beetle-sized machines skittered out across the sand, their tiny lenses blinking against the storm's edge. Mara followed their telemetry on her HUD, 6 sets of shaky eyes racing toward the anomaly. The storm hit faster than expected. Sand clawed the air, grains spitting like needles across her visor. Visibility dropped to a dozen meters, then less. The drone's feeds became her only sight. Through their eyes, she glimpsed shifting dunes, the cracked plates of ancient stone, and then something vast. Contact, Kalen whispered. The drones crested a ridge and stared down into a sinkhole where mud boiled like a cauldron. The sensor feed spiked red. Something enormous lay half-submerged there, half-covered in sludge, scales like fractured glass catching what little light filtered through the storm. One of the drones crept closer, its lens shaking as it focused on a curve that wasn't rock at all. It was a jaw. Myra's throat tightened. Roan, tell me I'm seeing wrong. The xenobiologist didn't answer at first. His gloved hands hovered over the sensor like he didn't trust it either. Finally, his voice came hushed, reverent. It's alive. The word hung heavier than the storm. Tala stepped forward, her synthetic eyes narrowing. Impossible. The Draconis Prime are extinct. Conquered Law 16 forbids. Law 16 can choke, Mara snapped. She couldn't stop staring at the feed. The jaw shifted, barely. The mud bubbled higher as a nostril flared, pulling in a ragged breath. That's no fossil, that's a living dragon. Kalen let out a nervous laugh that cracked halfway. Do you know what this means? His biomass alone. Don't finish that sentence. Myra's voice cut like a blade. We're not butchers. The storm howled, burying their suits in sand. The drones struggled against the wind, their feeds glitching. Mara started down the ridge, boots crunching over brittle stone. The others followed, though Tala's steps carried a reluctance she didn't bother to hide. When they reached the edge of the sinkhole, the scale of it stole the breath from Mara's lungs. The dragon's body stretched beyond sight, wings crumpled like broken sails across the mud. His chest rose only slightly, shuddering with each breath. Scars crisscrossed his hide, wounds old and new, some glowing faintly with crystalline residue. His eyes were shut, but even in that silence he radiated presence. Roan knelt at the edge, sensor pressed out over the void. He's dying, organs failing, crystalline core destabilized. If we leave him, he won't last another cycle. Then we don't leave him. Myra didn't hesitate. Tala's voice sharpened, the first edge of real emotion in it. You cannot intervene. The Conquered will not show mercy. Harboring a relic species is treason of the highest order. Myra turned, sand lashing her visor. We're humans, mercy's all we've got. The dragon stirred then, as if the sound of her voice pierced whatever abyss he'd sunk into. The mud cracked around his head as it lifted a fraction, one eye opening. The iris burned like a dying star, molten, rimmed with frost. It focused on them. Myra felt her knees weaken under that gaze. It wasn't the stare of a beast. It was a question raw and desperate. Why? She tightened her grip on her rifle, though not in defense. Because no one deserves to die alone, she whispered. The dragon's breath rattled, deep and thunderous, and a thin thread of flame leaked from between his teeth before sputtering into steam against the mud. His head sank back, but his eye lingered on her, unblinking, unwilling to close just yet. The storm roared louder, swallowing the world. Myra keyed her comms. "Roan, Kalen, get me everything you've got. Med kits, stabilizers, anything that can keep him alive." "You can't be serious," Tala said. "I've never been more serious." Kalen's voice shook with awe. "We're going to save a dragon." Mara looked down at the colossal shape before her, half buried, half dead, waiting on the edge of extinction. The last of his kind, the last breath in a wasted world, and she thought not today. The wind had eased slightly, though the air remained thick with dust that clawed at their suits. Captain Mara Idris crouched beside the dragon's massive head, the sensors and makeshift monitors that Roan and Kalen had dragged into position flickering and whining against the static. Every readout screamed danger. Crystalline core unstable, respiration shallow, circulatory systems failing. If they hesitated another cycle, Veltharion wouldn't live to see the next. Tala hovered nearby, her synthetic eyes reflecting the bronze haze of Thisar V's storm-filtered light. "This operation violates multiple conquered statutes. You are risking not only yourselves, but the legal standing of the entire crew. Intervention is not authorized. Intervention will result in imprisonment or termination." Mara glanced up at her. "You think I care about standing when a life is staring me down?" The AI's fingers flexed in the air. "It is illogical to act against the law for one organism. Statistically, survival probability is minimal, and your interference could provoke the conquered. Consider the ramifications." Roan shook his head as he adjusted a stabilizer, the thin lines of bioluminescent gel crawling over the dragon's scaled hide like veins of light. "Tala, logic doesn't account for morality. If we leave him, we commit a different kind of crime." Kalen, already half covered in mud and sweat, injected another dose of nutrient serum directly into the dragon's wing membrane. "I've never done anything this big before," he muttered, voice trembling between exhilaration and fear. "Literally, this isn't a lab specimen, he's alive." The dragon's eye twitched open, a molten, icy swirl of color that pinned them all in place. He breathed shallowly, a hiss of heat and vapor that made the mud around him sizzle and steam. His gaze locked on Mara, unblinking, and for a moment the world contracted to that single, impossible connection. "I think he knows we're trying to save him," Roan said softly, almost reverently. Mara exhaled through the grit of her helmet. "Then we don't stop." She keyed her comms. "Kalen, stabilize the core. Roan, monitor vitals. Tala, keep me updated on external threats. If the conquered shows, we'll need every edge we have." Tala's eyes narrowed. "You are jeopardizing the entire crew for a relic species. That is a fact, not a hypothesis." Myra ignored her and crouched closer to the dragon. The scales under her gloved hand were hot in spots, cold and brittle in others, fractured like stained glass. "Hey," she whispered. "You're going to make it, just a little longer." Veltharion shifted his massive head, mud sliding from his armored ridges. A low, guttural rumble escaped his throat, vibrating through the ground. The sound carried memory. Old and distant, like echoes from a star he'd once carried across galaxies. The vibration resonated in Mara's chest. It was a warning, a plea, a question all at once. Roan's hands shook slightly as he manipulated the bioscanners. "His heart rhythm, it's erratic. If we don't regulate the crystalline core, he won't last an hour. Kalen, can you reinforce the neural lattice stimulator?" Kalen's face went pale under his visor. "It's risky. If I misalign the stimulator, the core could fracture entirely." Mara rested a hand on his shoulder. "Then be precise, you've got one chance." The AI spoke again, softer this time. "Captain, even if successful, you have no guarantee of loyalty. Draconis Prime are apex predators and extremely intelligent. They do not form bonds with unknown species lightly. This could end disastrously." Mara's eyes didn't leave the dragon's gaze. "Try telling him that when he's dying." A hiss of flame snaked out from the dragon's maw, quickly dissipating into steam as the mud sizzled around him. Kalen jumped back, wiping sweat from his brow. "That was a warning." "I think he's asking us not to kill him," Mara muttered. Hours, or what felt like hours, passed in a haze of mud, grit, and the endless whine of sensors. Roan's hands moved tirelessly, adjusting doses and monitoring vitals. Kalen soldered and rewired stimulators, sweat and mud turning his hair into a mat of grime. Tala hovered, her sensors scanning the horizon for conquered ships, sending occasional alerts about wind velocity and storm shifts. Mara never left her post by the dragon's head, whispering encouragement into the hiss of the wind. The first major breakthrough came when Kalen, hands trembling, aligned the neural lattice stimulator with the crystalline core. A low hum began to pulse through the dragon's chest. Beltharion flinched violently at first, thrashing his massive head enough to send mud spilling over their boots. Then slowly, tentatively, the trembling eased. A steady rhythm emerged. His breath lengthened slightly, the shuddering in his chest smoothing. Roan exhaled a shaky laugh. It's working, he's stabilizing. The dragon's eye opened wider, and for the first time it didn't burn with pain. Instead, it glimmered with awareness, a spark of something ancient and alien. He shifted his head, turning it toward Mara, and the rumble from his throat deepened, not a roar but a sound of recognition. Mara's lips twitched into the faintest smile. "See, told you, you just needed a little help." Tala's tone was sharper now. "You are committing a flagrant violation of interstellar law. This species is considered extinct. Intervention will provoke the conquered." Mara stood slowly, brushing mud from her gloves. "We've already made our choice. No law can unmake a life, not today." Beltharion's chest rose and fell with greater ease, each breath sending waves of warmth into the mud. Steam curled around his jaw and wings, and for the first time the dragon's body seemed less corpse and more creature. His gaze, molten and cold all at once, stayed fixed on Mara, then flicked to the humans working beside her. Recognition flickered in that impossible eye, a spark that carried something like trust. Then the rumble changed, resonant and low, vibrating through the ground beneath them. It wasn't anger, it wasn't hunger. It was a sound of acknowledgement, of calculation, of the old intelligence that had once ruled stars. Mara lowered herself beside the dragon again. "You're safe, for now. We're not leaving you here, not like this." A long, shuddering exhale from Beltharion stirred the mud, sending ripples across the sinkhole. The dragon's chest swelled steadily now, the glow of the crystalline core pulsing in harmony with the hum of Kalen's stimulator. Roan's voice was hushed, almost reverential. "He's responding to us. He's alive because we chose to act. That's extraordinary." Kalen grinned despite the grime. "I never thought I'd patch up a living starship." Tala's tone softened slightly, though it still carried that edge of logic. "I cannot assess the ethical dimension, but survival probability has increased. I will continue monitoring." Mara reached out, placing a hand on the dragon's massive snout, feeling heat radiate against her glove. "You're going to live, Vaelth, and we'll get you out of here, whatever it takes." The dragon's eye narrowed, and for a moment it seemed almost pleased. A sound, deep and low, rumbled through his throat, a resonance that spoke of memory, of power, of a life that spanned light years. And Mara thought, this isn't just a rescue. It's a beginning. The wind howled, but for the first time it carried something different. Not death, not warning, but possibility. Beltharion's breathing had settled into a rhythm, a slow, deliberate cadence that resonated through the mud beneath him. The hum of Kalen's stimulator and the flicker of Roan's monitors had become a background chorus, punctuated only by the occasional hiss of escaping steam from the dragon's fractured wings. Mara crouched near the edge of the sinkhole, her visor streaked with dust, sweat, and mud, yet her eyes never left him. Every rise and fall of his chest felt like a heartbeat she shared, a fragile tether between life and extinction. Kalen wiped his forehead, the mud caking the edges of his goggles. "He's stabilizing, but the readings are abnormal. His core's still fluctuating. If we push him too hard too fast, we risk overloading him." Roan's hands moved in a practiced rhythm over his sensors. "Abnormal is an understatement. Vaelth's metabolism is folding energy in ways I've never documented. This isn't just a dragon, it's a living reactor. If we can't regulate it properly," his voice trailed off. He didn't need to finish. They all knew what failure meant. Tala's metallic gaze swept across the sinkhole. "Statistically, a life of this magnitude should be beyond recovery. Your success probability remains low. I advise contingency protocols." Mara's jaw tightened. There's no contingency except saving him. She leaned closer to Beltharion's scaled snout. The dragon's eye, molten and piercing, tracked her movements. He lifted his head slightly, the weight of it enough to make the mud quake beneath her feet. His nostrils flared, and a thin trail of smoke coiled into the wind. "You're awake enough to notice us," Roan whispered, awe in his voice. "He's observing intent, not just stimulus. That level of cognition," he let the thought hang. It was almost too much to process. Kalen adjusted the neural lattice stimulator again, the wires hissing as they conducted energy into the dragon's crystalline core. "I've never seen bioengineering on this scale," he said. "Whatever created him, they weren't messing around. He's a living starship." Veltharian's gaze shifted, following Kalen's movements. The rumble in his throat deepened, vibrating through the mud in a slow, measured tone. It wasn't aggressive, but it carried weight, intelligence, and Mara thought, a sense of appraisal. "Captain," Roan said quietly, "I think he knows we saved him. He's acknowledging agency, recognition, maybe even gratitude." Mara's heart hammered in her chest. "Then we're not done. Kalen, keep him stabilized. Roan, monitor every vital spike. Tala, we're not leaving until he's out of this mud and able to move without immediate risk." The dragon shifted his massive wings, sending a wave of steam and mud across the edge of the sinkhole. One wing cracked audibly, the sound like ice breaking under immense pressure. Kalen froze, then went back to work, hands moving faster, more precise. "His wings, they're beyond any repair kit I've got. We're going to have to improvise." Mara crouched closer to Veltharian's head. "Can you hear me? I'm not going anywhere. You're not dying here, not on my watch." Velth's eye narrowed, the iris contracting against the dull stormlight, then widened again. A shiver ran through his massive frame, not violent but deliberate, testing strength, measuring intent. Steam hissed from his mouth, a low, soft exhalation that Mara instinctively leaned into. The dragon's awareness was tangible, like standing beside a mountain that could think. Hours bled into each other. The storm's rage diminished slowly, leaving only the heat and the scent of sulfur and mud. Kalen and Roan worked in tandem, improvising a lattice of bioconduits and stimulators. Tala tracked the environment and scanned the horizon, though Mara noticed her glances toward the dragon's eye more often than not. Even the AI seemed captivated, or at least calculating far beyond the usual metrics. The first real sign of improvement came when Veltharian shifted his head entirely free of the mud, the motion slow, deliberate, measured. His gaze swept across the human crew. Kalen adjusted another stimulator wire and let out a nervous laugh. "We're literally patching up a living starship. I can't believe we're doing this." Veltharian's massive body shifted slightly, enough to send mud cascading down the sinkhole edges. He flexed a claw, each talon the size of a small vehicle, and the motion seemed to test balance, muscle, and memory. The hum from Kalen's stimulator pulsed in resonance with the dragon's core, and for the first time his body looked less like a corpse and more like a creature readying to rise. Mara exhaled through her visor. "See, told you, you just needed a little help." The dragon's chest pulsed rhythmically, glowing faintly through the mud as the stimulator hummed. Veltharian shifted again, this time more decisively, wings lifting just enough to show the massive span that had once carried him between stars. Roan's voice cracked with awe. "He's alive. He's really alive." Tala's tone softened, though it retained that edge of calculation. "Observation. Living specimen is responding favorably to intervention. Probability of extended survival has increased significantly." Mara leaned closer, voice low and steady. "You're safe. Not today. You're going to make it." Veltharian's rumble deepened, resonant, intelligent, vibrating through the mud. His eye met hers again, a spark of awareness, maybe gratitude, maybe something older, almost primordial. He shifted slightly, flexing, and the first real sign of strength returned to his limbs. The storm had passed. Dust settled. The sinkhole no longer felt like a grave. Myra straightened, mud streaking her visor, heartbeat hammering. She glanced at her crew, all exhausted, all alive, all watching. And above all, Veltharian lived. Veltharian's massive wings flexed with a cautious strength, lifting him slightly above the mud, sending a cascade of steaming sludge over the edges of the sinkhole. Mara stepped back instinctively, her boots sinking into the muck, but she didn't retreat. Every movement of the dragon was deliberate, measured, a testing of strength and trust. Kalen and Roan hovered near the stimulators, monitoring every fluctuation in the crystalline core, their hands trembling with exhaustion and awe. For a long moment the dragon simply regarded them, his eye molten and cold, vast and unreadable. Then came a low rumble, vibrating through the ground beneath them. Mara felt it deep in her chest and instinctively placed a hand on the mud, grounding herself. "He's communicating," Roan whispered. "Not words, not language as we know it, but intent, recognition." Veltharian shifted again, wings spanning fully now, muscles tensing, scales glittering in the dim, filtered light of Thisar V's settling storm. The air vibrated around them as he exhaled, not flame this time, but a pulsating wave of energy that felt alive, almost sentient. The stimulator responded in kind, humming in resonance with the dragon's biocrystalline core. Kalen's eyes widened. That's not just a heartbeat. He's alive in a way I can't even quantify. Myra stepped closer, her visor streaked with dust, sweat, and mud. Veltharion, we didn't just save you. We want you to live, to move, to remember who you are. The dragon's eye narrowed, molten gold flashing against the cold blue of his iris. Then it widened, and the vibration from his chest grew more intense, almost rhythmic, as though he were calculating the humans beside him. A single thought seemed to emanate from him, unspoken yet unmistakable. Why? Why? Myra repeated softly, crouching low. Because no one deserves to die alone, because we don't abandon life, because we believe in second chances. Veltharion rumbled, a deep, resonant vibration that shook the mud beneath them, almost a chuckle, almost a sigh. His wings flexed again, and the mud around him quivered as though acknowledging his power. Mara could feel the intelligence in the movement, the memory of stars folded and unfolded through him, the echo of civilizations carried long ago, the weight of time and loss. Roan's voice trembled. I think he understands. I think he trusts us. Kalen shook his head, awe overtaking exhaustion. We're talking about a creature designed to travel between stars, and he's just looking at us, assessing, recognizing. The dragon shifted his massive head toward Mara, nostrils flaring, eyes locking with hers. Then came a slow, deliberate exhale, and with it images, impressions, memories, or perhaps visions, flashed across her mind. Vast voids of space, stars folding upon themselves, cities carried in living hulls of crystalline sinew, the weight of generations, the rise and fall of entire civilizations. Mara stumbled back, hand to her visor, heart hammering. He's showing us everything, Tala said, her voice steady, but her eyes, synthetic though they were narrowed in fascination. The Draconis Prime were not mere creatures. They were vessels, carriers of civilizations. He's sharing history. Veltharion rumbled again, slower this time, and a faint glow spread across his scales, pulsing in rhythm with the hum of the stimulator. Kalen and Roan adjusted their devices, careful not to disrupt the resonance. Myra stepped closer again, heart pounding. You carried worlds, she whispered. You bore life across the stars, and now you're here, still alive, still fighting. The dragon flexed his wings again, rising slightly above the mud, the full span of him casting a shadow over the crew. The vibration in his chest deepened, almost like a heartbeat amplified 1,000-fold. His gaze swept across them, and then, slowly, deliberately, his massive head dipped, brushing the ground near Mara in what could only be interpreted as acknowledgement. Roan muttered under his breath, voice hushed with awe. He's offering a bond, recognition, maybe even alliance. Kalen swallowed hard, looking between Mara and the dragon. An alliance with a living starship. Mara's eyes never left Veltharion's. Not just an alliance, trust. He's offering us his trust. If we honor it, we can learn from him, protect him, maybe even travel with him. The dragon rumbled in low agreement, lifting his head and stretching his neck, sending steam curling into the settling stormlight. His gaze remained fixed on the humans, and the pulsing of his core synchronized with the hum of Kalen's stimulator. For the first time, Veltharion's immense body seemed poised for life, not death. Tala's voice broke the reverent silence. Captain, the risk of exposure remains extreme. The conquered will not tolerate harboring a living Draconis Prime. Legal repercussions. Legal repercussions be damned, Mara interrupted, voice firm. We don't abandon life, not now, not ever. Veltharion shifted again, wings flexing fully now, muscles coiling beneath shattered scales. He rumbled, a sound that was neither roar nor growl, but a deep, intelligent vibration that reverberated through the sinkhole, through the ground, through the humans themselves. It was acknowledgement, recognition, acceptance. Mara extended a hand, palm open, toward the dragon. You're not alone anymore. We're with you. We'll get you out of this mud, out of this wasteland, and then you'll remember what you are. The dragon's eye narrowed, then widened, molten gold flashing against icy blue. Another low rumble pulsed through his chest, and for a brief instant, Myra felt an almost human understanding in it. A connection, an offer. Not just survival, but partnership. Kalen exhaled, voice trembling. We're actually forming a bond with a living starship, a dragon. Roan's hands hovered over his instruments, awe and disbelief mingling in his eyes. This changes everything. If the galaxy learns he's alive. Myra didn't answer. She kept her gaze on Veltharion, watching as he flexed, lifted slightly above the mud, pulsing with life, memory, and raw power. She could feel the weight of history, of civilizations carried, of stars folded and unfolded. And yet here he was, still breathing, still alive, still choosing to acknowledge them. And in that acknowledgement, in the rumble that vibrated through the ground and their bones, Mara knew one truth. They had saved more than a dragon. They had saved a living bridge to the past, a sentient vessel capable of carrying them into the unknown. And Veltharion had chosen to trust them in return. The sun broke through the storm clouds just enough to cast a pale light across the sinkhole. Steam rose from the mud, curling around wings that stretched wider with each measured beat, as Veltharion settled into a cautious readiness, alive, aware, and watching them in silent, powerful agreement. It was no longer just a rescue. It was the beginning of something that could reshape the galaxy. The storm had passed entirely, leaving Thisar V in an oppressive, silent heat. The once violent wind now whispered across cracked dunes, carrying the scent of sulfur, scorched mud, and something far older, something alive. Myra, Kaelin, Roan, and Tala stood at the edge of the sinkhole, gazing at Veltharion as he flexed his massive wings, pulsing the glow of his crystalline core in slow, steady beats. He had begun to move with purpose now, shifting his enormous weight to test the mud's grip beneath him, each motion deliberate, precise. Tala's voice cut through the heat. "Captain, I am detecting multiple spacecraft entering the outer orbital vectors above Thisar V. Data suggests standard conquered intercept patterns. They have been alerted to unauthorized life forms." Myra's jaw tightened. "How long until they arrive?" "Approximately 8 minutes," Tala replied. "Long enough to engage countermeasures or escape if immediate action is taken." Kaelin ran a hand through his mud-streaked hair, eyes wide. "You're saying the Conquered knows we're here, that they know he's alive?" Roan's voice was low and incredulous. "They'll want to take him, study him, weaponize him, maybe even terminate him if they can't control him. No one in the galaxy sees a Draconis Prime as anything but a resource or a threat." Mara crouched near Veltharion's massive head, brushing her mud-slicked glove across a ridge of shattered crystal scales. "Not today. We've fought too hard to get him this far. He survives because we chose to act, not because the Conquered allows it. That makes him ours to protect." Veltharion shifted, lifting his head fully. Steam hissed from his cracked wings as he flexed, testing strength. His eye tracked each human carefully molten gold swirling with icy streaks. His gaze moved to the horizon, where faint metallic glints betrayed Conquered scout vessels moving into position. A low, resonant rumble vibrated through the ground, deep and deliberate, communicating awareness, caution, and calculation. Kaelin's voice was barely a whisper. "He knows they're coming." Myra nodded, "And we need to move. He can't stay here in the sinkhole, too exposed. Kaelin, any chance we can reinforce the wings enough to get him airborne for a short jump?" Kaelin's fingers flexed over wires and conduits, sweat and grime caking his suit. "Maybe, just maybe, I can patch together a temporary neural interface with the stimulator. It won't hold long, but it might give us enough lift to get him out of range." Roan adjusted sensors on Veltharion's flank. "His core is stable enough for a short burst, but one misstep and—" His voice trailed, and none of them finished the thought. Myra stood resolute. "We don't have a choice. We either move now or lose him. Tala, I need a full scan of the Conquered ships, positions, weapon capabilities, vectors. We need a plan before we attempt liftoff." Tala's eyes flickered, calculating. "Probability of successful evasion without engagement. 32%. With engagement, negligible. Your risk is extreme." Myra's voice was firm, unwavering. "We've never done anything safe, Tala. This isn't about probability. This is about survival, and we're not leaving him." Veltharion let out a measured. The dragon lifted higher, mud cascading from his body as his wings beat with staggering power. The Conquered scouts opened fire, bolts of plasma streaking toward them. Tala's voice cut through the comms. "Incoming fire. Trajectory analysis recommends evasive maneuver, immediate liftoff, or fatal strike." Myra's voice was firm. "We're lifting off now." Veltharion surged upward, wings pumping, mud and steam trailing. His crystalline core pulsed in synchronized rhythm with the stimulator. The dragon's weight shifted, altitude gained, and the Conquered's weapons fired, some strikes hitting the ground where they had been a heartbeat before. Kaelin's voice cracked with excitement. "He's flying, he's actually flying." Roan let out a shaky laugh. "I don't believe this, he's airborne." The dragon arched, pulling away from the sinkhole. Steam hissed and wings flexed with power that seemed almost supernatural. Mara clung to the interface console Kalen had attached temporarily, guiding his ascent. Veltharian's eye remained on her, molten gold and icy blue, intelligent and aware, trusting in their guidance. Tala's tone was sharp but awed. Evasion probability increasing as he ascends. Recommend continued synchronization with human operators. Conquered intercept vectors approaching limit. Engagement imminent. Mara smiled grimly. We've got him this far, that's all that matters. Veltharian surged higher, clearing the sinkhole entirely. His wings flexed in powerful arcs, mud and debris falling behind them. The dragon's rumbles harmonized with the stimulator's hum, creating a resonance that carried over the desert sands, announcing to the skies and the approaching conquered fleet. The last Draconis Prime was alive, aware, and ascending. The first few conquered craft fired again, bolts streaking toward him, but Veltharian twisted in midair, wings carving the wind with astonishing precision. Mara shouted over the roar of wind and energy pulses, "Keep going." "We're not done yet." The dragon banked hard, rising into the upper thermal currents, dodging with skill that seemed preternatural, calculated, and terrifying. The humans held their ground on the interface, guiding him through the first critical moments of flight, each second a delicate balance between survival and catastrophe. And in that moment, Mara realized it was no longer just a rescue mission. They had ignited a spark, a living weapon of ancient power, and the galaxy would never forget it. Veltharian surged higher into the thin, acidic skies of Thisar V, each beat of his wings carving through heat waves and rising columns of sand. Mara clung to the temporary interface Kalen had rigged, feeling the pulsing resonance of the dragon's crystalline core through her gloves. Every shift of his massive body was a negotiation with gravity, with the fragile lattice that kept him alive, and with the approaching conquered fleet that cut through the sky like a swarm of predatory insects. "Keep him steady." Mara shouted voice hoarse against the wind, her visor fogged with heat and sweat. Kalen adjust neural damping, Roan monitor core output. Kalen's hands flew over the patchwork stimulator, fingers slick with grime and sweat. "I've never pushed a system this far before. If we misalign one conduit, he could fracture his core entirely." Roan's eyes never left the readouts. "Core stable at 74%, but fluctuations are spiking. This is going to be a delicate balance. One wrong pulse and we lose him." Veltharian arched his wings, powerful and immense, muscles coiling beneath fractured crystalline plates. Steam hissed from ruptures along his back, trailing behind him like vaporous banners, and Mara felt the hum of his energy pulse synchronize with the stimulator. He banked sharply, twisting midair to avoid a volley of plasma bolts from the conquered scouts. The heat from their weapons seared the air around them, but the dragon's momentum carried him forward, unerring, precise, almost calculating each beat of his wings against the hostile assault. "Incoming!" 3 volleys, converging trajectory. Tala shouted, her sensors flaring with activity. Evasive maneuver recommended. Mara leaned into the controls, sweat dripping down her visor. "Do it! Just keep him flying." Veltharian responded, muscles coiling like steel springs. He twisted his colossal body mid-flight, tail sweeping low over the desert, diverting one volley while another grazed past, vaporizing in clouds of sand and molten residue. The resonance from his core intensified, almost musical in its harmonics, and Mara felt it in her chest, a rhythm of life, of power, of ancient memory awakened. Kalen's voice shook with adrenaline. He's actually dodging them. He's thinking in real time, adapting faster than any AI I've ever seen. Roan's hand flew over the readouts, monitoring vitals and energy output. He's incredible. His crystalline core is using ambient thermal energy, atmospheric ions. He's literally drawing power from the storm and the environment to sustain flight. Nothing like this exists in any record. Veltharian rumbled low, a vibration that rolled across the desert below and through Mara herself. She placed a hand on his neck, feeling the subtle quiver of thought, recognition, and intelligence. His massive eye swept across the humans, molten gold circling icy blue, intelligent, aware, trusting. For the first time, Mara understood he was not just flying. He was choosing to fly with them, to survive with them, and to acknowledge them as partners. The conquered fleet began to spread, cutting across the sky in coordinated formations. Mara's heart pounded. Tala vector predictions. How many ships? 4 primary cruisers, each with auxiliary interceptors. the AI responded. Engagement window, less than 2 minutes if evasive maneuvers are not executed with precision. Kalen groaned, 2 minutes. We're not even out of the atmosphere yet. Mara's jaw clenched, then we make those 2 minutes count. Veltharion banked sharply, wings slicing through air currents, lifting higher above the heat-distorted horizon. His tail lashed, displacing sandstorms and deflecting incoming plasma arcs. The hum of his core pulsed faster, reacting to each sudden adjustment in velocity, and the stimulator hummed in perfect synchrony. Roan leaned close to Mara, voice barely audible over the roar of wind and the dragon's rumbles. We're keeping him alive because we trust him, and he's trusting us back. Every move he makes, he's calculating the lives of the crew. Mara nodded, eyes on the horizon. Then we honor that trust. Another volley streaked toward them, plasma bolts tracing fiery arcs through the thin clouds. Veltharion twisted midair, claws raking through the air, generating a shockwave that deflected one of the projectiles. The next struck the edge of his wing, hissing and vaporizing on contact with his crystalline scales. He roared, a sound that shook the very air, and Mara felt it in her bones, a primal, intelligent fury that carried memory and pain. Tala's voice was clipped. Incoming trajectory adjustment required, probability of evasion without collision, 31%. Mara's hand tightened. 31% isn't zero, keep going. Kalen's fingers flew over the stimulator, redirecting energy flows to reinforce the wing joints. Sparks arced in the interface, and for a moment it seemed like they might lose him. But Veltharion compensated instantly, tilting his wings, flexing his tail, and the drone of the desert below stretched into a blur as he climbed higher. Roan let out a shaky breath. He's outmaneuvering them. The human-dragon interface is working. He's reading our intentions and the Conquered's movements simultaneously. This is unprecedented. Veltharion rumbled again, a low, powerful vibration that seemed to acknowledge the humans guiding him, recognizing their will as aligned with his own. His wings flexed with renewed strength, lifting him higher into the ionized currents above the desert. Steam and residual mud trailed from his body like the ghost of the storm they had just survived. Mara's voice was firm, unwavering. We're not just escaping. We're showing him he can trust us. We're keeping him alive, and we're getting out of here. The Conquered scouts accelerated, weapons primed, but Veltharion's intelligence, combined with Kalen's makeshift interface and Roan's precise monitoring, allowed them to anticipate every strike. Plasma bolts missed, arcing harmlessly into the clouds, and the dragon banked sharply, climbing higher, the glow of his crystalline core bright against the dim sky. Tala's voice softened slightly, almost awed. Observation. Survival probability now exceeds initial prediction. This is extraordinary. Veltharion flexed his wings fully, rising above the desert, above the storm-scarred dunes, rising toward the thinning atmosphere where Conquered fire was less effective. His body pulsed in harmony with the stimulator, rumbles resonating like an ancient engine of power, life, and intelligence awakened. Mara exhaled through her visor, voice trembling with relief and awe. We did it. We're keeping him alive, and we're not alone in this. Veltharion roared, the sound carrying across the desert and into the sky. A declaration of life, of awareness, of partnership. The Conquered fleet followed, but for the first time Mara felt a glimmer of hope, because they weren't just running. They were flying together. Together, human and dragon, they had become something no one in the galaxy had ever seen. Veltharion's wings sliced through the thinning atmosphere, each beat carrying them farther from the wastelands of Thisar. Mara gripped the temporary interface, pulse pounding, as the dragon responded instantly to her movements, flexing and adjusting in ways that made it clear he understood the human's intentions. The Conquered fleet was still in pursuit, tiny specks against the clouded sky. But the danger now felt almost secondary to the tension that had grown between them and the dragon. He's holding steady, Kalen said, fingers flying over the stimulator's controls. Core output is consistent, wing muscles are adapting, but he's tense, like he's testing us as much as the environment. Roan leaned closer to the monitors, brow furrowed. He's aware of the Conquered, yes, but his focus isn't just on evasion. He's evaluating us, calculating. That level of cognition, I've never seen anything like it. He's wary. Mara's eyes never left Veltharion's massive head. Of course he's wary. He's a predator. Apex intelligence doesn't trust easily, and we just pulled him from the brink of death. Tala's voice, clipped and precise, cut through the hum of the wind. Warning, neurobehavioral scans indicate increased stress responses. Emotional evaluation suggests the dragon is conflicted. Trust versus instinctive caution. Immediate risk to cooperation exists if trust thresholds are breached. Mara exhaled, grit against her visor. Then we don't push, we let him decide how far he'll trust us, but we can't stop moving, not with the conquered still tailing us. Veltharion rumbled low, a vibration that rolled through the interface and resonated in Mara's chest. It wasn't anger or aggression, but a deep, measured inquiry. He dipped slightly, adjusting his trajectory to skim the edge of a thermal current, testing Kalen's interface response. Mara felt the subtle tug of his mind, his awareness probing theirs, asking questions they couldn't answer with words. Did he just? Kalen's voice was awestruck. He's reading us, trying to see what we're capable of. Roan's hands hovered over his instruments, lips pressed tight. It's like he's evaluating whether we deserve to fly with him. Every motion, every pulse were being tested. Mara nodded, voice quiet. Then we pass. We show him we're reliable. That's all we can do. Veltharion flexed his wings, rising above the clouds, light catching on his fractured crystalline scales. The hum of his core pulsed in tandem with Kalen's stimulator, a delicate harmony that spoke of life, intelligence, and calculation. His eye, molten gold circling icy blue, never left Mara, never left the humans guiding him. It was a gaze that measured intent, judged character, and weighed the promise of trust. The conquered ships adjusted their formations, intercept vectors tightening. Plasma bolts streaked through the upper atmosphere, small arcs of destructive energy that would have torn through any ordinary craft. Veltharion twisted midair, tail whipping like a pendulum, sending shockwaves that diverted several shots. The resonance of his core intensified, and Mara felt it thrumming through the interface, through the dragon, through herself. Kalen's fingers flew over the controls. We're keeping him alive, but he's learning, adjusting in real time. He's thinking faster than I can process. Roan's voice trembled slightly. He's reading our intentions, adapting to the environment, calculating threats, and he's still watching us. Not just the conquered, us, our reactions, our decisions. Tala's synthetic eyes flickered. Observation. Trust evaluation remains incomplete. Risk of sudden non-cooperation. Moderate. Recommendation. Maintain consistent human behavior, avoid abrupt or conflicting input. Mara exhaled through the visor, nodding. Understood, steady. Calm, predictable, and always protective. She reached out, hand resting briefly on one of the conduits running from the stimulator into Veltharion's wing. The dragon's rumble deepened, almost approvingly, a low vibration that communicated acknowledgement. Veltharion flexed, wings coiling and uncoiling like living machinery, tail sweeping to maintain balance. Steam hissed from the ruptures along his back, glinting against the sunlight filtering through thin clouds. He banked sharply, then leveled out, every movement precise, deliberate, intelligent. Mara felt the weight of his decision in every pulse transmitted through the interface. Kalen's voice was awed. He's choosing to fly with us. He's not just responding, he's consenting. He's trusting us. Roan exhaled softly. Trust, earned through action. He's calculating, yes, but he's also recognizing our intentions. We've proven ourselves in his eyes, at least tentatively. Mara's lips curved into a faint, tired smile. Then we don't break that trust, we honor it. Keep him safe, guide him, support him. That's the only way forward. Veltharion rumbled low, a vibration that rolled across the atmosphere, echoing off the clouds and through the thin upper winds. Mara felt it deep in her chest, a rhythm of acknowledgement, of assessment, of tentative connection. He dipped slightly, brushing closer to the humans aboard the interface, wings stretching wide, testing strength, testing intention. The conquered ships closed distance, their weapons primed, but Veltharion's precision and the humans' guidance allowed them to dodge with astonishing coordination. Each movement was a negotiation, speed, lift, trajectory, and mutual understanding. Mara realized that the flight wasn't just survival, it was a symbiosis forming, a bond solidifying under fire. Kalen exhaled, a mix of fear and exhilaration. We're actually doing this. We're flying with him. He's letting us. Roan's gaze never left the monitors. And every maneuver we make, every decision, he's watching, learning, judging, trusting. Tala's tone, though precise, softened slightly. Observation, bond formation in progress. Probability of cooperative behavior remains high if parameters are maintained. Human compliance critical. Mara's hands tightened on the interface. We maintain it. Steady, deliberate, protective. He's alive because of us, and now we're flying together. Not just surviving, but connected. Partners. Beltharion flexed his wings again, pulsing energy through the stimulator, rising higher, twisting gracefully above the conquered pursuit. His eye remained locked on Mara, and for the first time she felt certainty, not in the outcome of the flight, but in the understanding between them. He was testing them, yes, but also accepting them. And in that moment, Mara knew they weren't just riding a dragon. They were forming an alliance older and stronger than any law, any conquered fleet, or any expectation of the galaxy. The sky stretched before them, endless and filled with danger, but also possibility. And together, human and dragon, they would navigate it. Each pulse of Veltharion's core, each beat of his wings, a testament to the trust they had earned and the bond they had forged under fire and survival. Veltharion soared above the upper layers of Thisar V's atmosphere, wings stretching like molten steel and fractured crystal, catching the first light of the distant sun. The conquered fleet's pursuers had spread into interception patterns, but the dragon's flight was precise, fluid, and terrifyingly intelligent. Mara's hands clutched the interface, every pulse of the dragon's crystalline core resonating through her gloves, through her chest, through her very sense of being. Tala, Mara shouted over the roar of wind and energy vibrations. Status report on conquered approach. The AI's voice remained calm, almost clinical, though even Tala's tone hinted at awe. Primary cruisers have adjusted vectors. Secondary interceptors are forming blockade formations. Engagement probability, 65% within the next 30 seconds. Kalen's hands flew over the stimulator, sweat streaking his grime-smeared face. The interface can only sustain output for another minute at full lift. After that, we risk overload. He won't maintain altitude without us. Roan's voice cracked with tension. We don't have a choice. We either push him beyond limits or we get shot down. Mara tightened her grip. We push. We've got this far. We're not letting him fall now. Veltharion banked sharply, twisting midair, tail whipping in arcs that created shockwaves in the thin upper atmosphere. Plasma bolts streaked past, some narrowly missing, others striking distant thermal clouds, igniting them in flickers of fire. The dragon's crystalline scales reflected the explosions, molten light shimmering over fractured surfaces. His rumbles deepened, a vibration Mara felt in her chest. Each beat, each surge of energy from his core, pulsed through the interface, amplifying their connection. Kalen's hands moved frantically. I can push neural feedback for another 45 seconds, maybe a minute. After that, he's on his own. Roan's eyes were wide, glued to monitors showing vitals, energy pulses, and trajectory. Even without feedback, he's learning our patterns. He's adapting faster than we can react. We've never seen anything like this. This isn't just flight, this is intelligence in motion. Mara exhaled through the visor, eyes locked on Veltharion's massive head. Then we trust him, he trusts us. We move as one, steady, precise. The conquered cruisers adjusted, weapons primed, plasma arcs streaking across the thin clouds. Veltharion twisted midair, wings coiling and flexing, tail sweeping to generate countervortex currents. He dodged with impossible precision, every maneuver a calculation of aerodynamics, energy, and human coordination. Tala's voice cut through the interface. Observation. Dragon is actively compensating for human input. Stress levels elevated but adaptive response optimal. Probability of successful evasion, 78% if synchronization maintained. Kalen's grin was nervous, teeth clenched. 78% is better than we deserved. Keep him steady, Mara. One misstep and... I know, Mara muttered. We keep him steady. Veltharion rumbled low, Mara's pulse quickened. Then we follow it, we trust it. This is his fight as much as ours. Veltharion banked again, spiraling upward through thinning clouds, tail whipping, wings flexing with impossible strength. The conquered ships fired again, plasma arcs blazing. But each bolt was deflected by air currents generated by his tail, absorbed by fractured scales or narrowly dodged. Every move was calculated, precise, and terrifying in its perfection. Kalen adjusted the stimulator, eyes wide. Core output steady. He's compensating for neural feedback loss, integrating it into his own motor functions. He's becoming autonomous in real time. Tala's voice was clipped. Observation. Trust bond between human operators and dragon remains intact. Probability of cooperative behavior remains high. Recommendation. Maintain consistent input. and avoid abrupt changes. Mara's hands tightened on the interface. Understood, steady, precise, protective, we don't break this bond now. Beltharian's rumbles deepened, vibrations synchronizing with the stimulator's hum. He twisted sharply, wings slicing the upper atmosphere, and the conquered cruisers faltered in formation, struggling to predict his movements. He surged upward faster, higher, every beat of his wings a negotiation with gravity, with energy, with the humans guiding him. Roan exhaled shakily. We're actually doing this. He's trusting us. We're alive because he's alive. Kalen's fingers flew over the controls, sweat dripping from his hairline. He's using the environment, our input, the residual energy from the storm. He's literally flying with us, not just as a passenger, but as an active partner. Mara's lips curved faintly. That's exactly what I wanted him to understand. We're not just saving him, we're showing him we can be trusted, and now we fly together. Beltharian flexed, wings pulsing, core glowing brighter, rumbles resonating across the upper atmosphere. His tail swept in calculated arcs, generating shockwaves, and his gaze remained fixed on the humans. For the first time, Mara felt certainty, not in survival, but in understanding. He was learning. They were learning. They were no longer separate entities. Human and dragon, pilot and vessel, partner and starship. Every pulse, every beat of wings and heart was synchronized in mutual trust, forged in fire, mud, and survival. The conquered fleet struggled to keep up, firing blindly as Beltharian rose beyond their immediate range, wings stretching wide, the hum of his crystalline core pulsing like a living heartbeat across the thin upper air. Mara exhaled, pulse pounding. They had survived Thisarv, they had survived the conquered fleet. And in that survival, something extraordinary had formed, a bond, unbreakable, intelligent, and alive. Together, they were unstoppable. Beltharian pierced the thin upper currents of Thisarv's atmosphere, wings slicing through clouds like molten blades, crystalline scales reflecting shards of sunlight and stormlight alike. The conquered fleet had begun to spread, the smaller interceptors trailing far behind, unable to match his agility in the upper thermals. Mara's hands were steady on the interface, pulse thrumming in time with the dragon's core, the hum of the stimulator vibrating through her gloves and into her chest. Every beat of Beltharian's wings was synchronized with theirs, a rhythm of trust, survival, and unspoken understanding. Kalen, Mara called over the roar of wind, we need a trajectory out of the atmosphere. He can't stay here for long. Kalen's fingers danced across the stimulator, adjusting conduits and energy flow in real time. I can stabilize him for another 2 minutes. After that, we're relying entirely on his own strength and ingenuity. He's ready, but the neural feedback interface is maxed out. Roan's eyes never left the vitals. His core is holding at 82%. Energy distribution is optimal, but the Conquered's adjusting too. They're predicting our path, they won't give up easily. Mara's jaw tightened. Then we force the path they can't anticipate, upward, into the ionized currents. Beltharian, follow my lead, trust us like we trust you. The dragon rumbled low, a vibration that Mara felt in her chest, in her gloves, in her bones. He flexed his wings, coiling muscles beneath fractured crystalline scales, lifting higher, pivoting with terrifying precision. Steam hissed from ruptured points along his back as he twisted to avoid a volley of plasma bolts. The hum of his core pulsed in time with the stimulator, energy surging through every fiber of his being. Tala's voice cut sharply through the interface. Alert! Conquered primary cruisers adjusting intercept vectors. Engagement window, 18 seconds. Probability of collision or destruction, 47% without evasive maneuver. Kalen's hands shook as he rerouted energy. We can't keep him tethered much longer. He's stabilizing himself now, but I need to disengage soon or we risk feedback overload. Mara nodded, eyes never leaving Beltharian. Understood, we're ready, trust yourself, trust us. We've earned this moment together. Beltharian's wings flexed, steam trailing like ribbons of fire. He twisted sharply, tail lashing in wide arcs, generating vortex currents that deflected plasma arcs. Each movement was deliberate, intelligent, and terrifyingly precise. The conquered fleet fired again, but the bolts missed, vaporizing harmlessly in clouds of ionized particles. Roan's voice was awed. He's calculating faster than we can track. He's reading the fleet, our input, the environment. He's learning on the fly. Kalen's eyes were wide, fingers still adjusting conduits. He's autonomous now. He's integrating our feedback into his own systems. This is beyond anything we've ever seen. He's evolving in real time. Mara placed a hand lightly on one of the neural conduits still connected to Viltharion. He knows we're guiding him, but he's making the choices. Every beat of his wings, every twist, every surge, it's him deciding. We just help him trust us. Viltharion rumbled deeply, vibrations resonating through the interface. He banked sharply, ascending into ionized currents, wings slicing through air with impossible precision. Plasma bolts streaked past, some too fast to track, but his tail and wings generated shockwaves that diverted or absorbed them. Tala's voice was clipped, almost reverent. Observation. Dragon demonstrates advanced spatial reasoning and predictive capability. Human input still valuable for stabilization, but autonomy is increasing exponentially. Cooperative behavior probability, near maximal. Kalen exhaled sharply. We're barely holding on, 2 more minutes of interface max output, then it's all on him. Mara's lips pressed into a thin line. Then we've trained him well. We've shown him we're trustworthy. He can handle this. He's more than alive, he's aware, intelligent, and ready. Veltharion's crystalline core pulsed brighter, rumbles deepening into a resonance that shook the upper atmosphere. He twisted midair, wings flexing, tail lashing to generate countercurrents. Steam hissed from fractures, but he soared higher, moving faster, rising above the Concord's optimal engagement envelope. Roan whispered almost to himself, he's not just surviving, he's dominating. This is his sky, his fight, his decision. Kalen's grin was nervous but awestruck. And he's letting us ride with him. We're partners in this flight. Partners in life. Mara exhaled, pulse hammering. Exactly, and we don't break that bond now. We fly together, we survive together, we win together. Veltharion banked, twisting over the upper currents, pulsing energy from his core in synchrony with the stimulator's fading hum. The conquered fleet struggled to match his maneuvers, plasma fire striking empty air or dispersing in shockwaves. His eye, molten gold circling icy blue, never left Mara and the human crew guiding him. It was acknowledgement, intelligence, recognition, and trust all in one. Tala's tone softened slightly. Observation, full cooperative bond confirmed, human-dragon synchronization optimal. Probability of survival beyond current engagement. 89% if current trajectory maintained. Mara's hands tightened on the interface. Then we maintain it, steady, precise, protective. This bond isn't just about survival, it's about trust, respect, and recognition. He knows we've earned it and we won't squander it. Veltharion's wings beat harder, faster, ascending through the upper layers of ionized air. Steam trailed behind him like a comet's tail, scales reflecting fractured sunlight. Each movement, each rumbled pulse was perfect, precise, intelligent. The conquered fleet fell further behind, unable to predict or counter him. Roan's voice trembled. We've never seen anything like this. He's alive, aware, intelligent, and he's choosing us as partners, not passengers, partners. Kalen's fingers rested briefly on the interface, eyes wide. This is history. We're part of it, we're flying with a living starship, a dragon. Mara's pulse slowed slightly, adrenaline giving way to awe. And he's choosing to trust us. That's everything. That's what survival looks like. Veltharion's rumbles deepened, resonating through the upper currents, through the human crew, through the sky itself. Every beat of his wings, every pulse of his core, every twist of his tail was a testament to survival, to trust, to the bond forged between human and dragon in fire, mud, and mutual respect. They were no longer just running. They were ascending together, partners, allies, and witnesses to a bond older and more powerful than the galaxy could comprehend. Veltharion broke through the upper atmosphere, wings slicing clean currents of near-vacuum air, crystalline scales catching the first pale light of the distant sun. The conquered fleet trailed far below now, weapons firing blindly, unable to match his speed, agility, or intelligence. Mara's hands trembled slightly on the interface, though her pulse had begun to calm. Every thrum of the dragon's core resonated through her gloves and into her chest, a heartbeat shared across species and mind, a rhythm of life, survival, and trust. "Status report!" Mara shouted over the roar of the thinning air. Tala's voice was steady, precise, though tinged with awe. Conquered fleet disengagement predicted within 3 minutes. Pursuit vectors exceed safe atmospheric limits. Probability of interception. Less than 5% if current trajectory maintained. Kalen exhaled sharply, fingers still adjusting conduits. We're stabilizing him perfectly now, but neural interface will have to disengage fully in 10 seconds. After that, it's all him. Roan's eyes were wide, glued to monitors. He's more than capable. He's learned every input, every nuance. We're guiding him, yes, but he's flying himself now. Every pulse, every wing beat is decision, calculation, and trust. Myra nodded, voice firm, resolute. Then we trust him, fully, all of us. Beltharion rumbled low, a vibration that rolled through the interface, through the dragon, through Mara and the crew. He flexed his wings in wide, sweeping arcs, tail whipping with precision, generating currents that adjusted their trajectory mid-flight. The hum of his crystalline core pulsed brighter, synchronized now with the fading hum of Kalen's stimulator as he disengaged the neural conduits. Mara felt the last surge of energy pass into the dragon, then nothing but his own autonomous power. Neural interface disengaged, Kalen said softly, awe thick in his voice. He's fully himself now, every move, every choice his own. Beltharion arched, wings beating with power and elegance beyond comprehension. He banked sharply, rising into the upper stratosphere, each motion fluid, deliberate, majestic. Plasma bolts from the conquered fleet fell away harmlessly, striking thin clouds or dispersing in atmospheric turbulence. Mara exhaled slowly, feeling the tension release from her body in waves. Tala's voice was quiet, almost reverent. Observation, bond between human operators and dragon remains intact, cooperative behavior fully self-sustained. Survival probability near maximal. Mara's hands relaxed slightly on the interface, though her eyes never left Beltharion. We did it. We kept him alive. He chose to trust us, and now he's flying on his own. The dragon rumbled, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to fill the sky itself. Steam hissed from ruptures in his crystalline scales, but he was strong, alive, intelligent, aware. His eye, molten gold, circling icy blue, swept across the humans one final time before turning upward, scanning the void above. Mara felt the intelligence in that gaze, the recognition, the understanding. He remembered them, honored them, and accepted them as partners. Roan whispered, almost breathless, "He's magnificent. He's more than alive. He's aware. He's free." Kalen's grin was wide, disbelief and awe mingling. "And he trusts us. We're part of this, partners in history, partners in flight." Mara exhaled, heart-pounding, pulse settling. "We didn't just save him. We gave him back his life, his choice, his sky, and he gave us trust in return. That's everything." Beltharion flexed, wings extending fully, lifting higher still, leaving the conquered fleet far below, the desert wastelands shrinking beneath them. He banked, spiraled upward, and for a moment the humans guiding him felt weightless, as if the bond they had forged carried them beyond the limits of gravity and fear. The dragon rumbled again, slower now, deliberate, a vibration of acknowledgement. Myra placed a hand over the interface console one last time, feeling the pulse through her gloves. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible over the hum of the upper atmosphere. "For trusting us, for choosing to fly with us." Beltharion's eye flicked once toward her, molten gold and icy blue swirling, then turned skyward. Wings flexed, tail sweeping in majestic arcs. Steam hissed from his fractures, reflecting light like molten gemstones. And then, with a powerful surge, he shot upward into the stratosphere, leaving the conquered fleet behind, leaving the desert behind, leaving the past behind. Kalen let out a long breath. We did it. He's alive, free, and we're part of it." Roan nodded slowly, voice soft. "We didn't just save a dragon, we witnessed history, we participated in it, and we're alive to see it." Mara stood, visor streaked with sweat and mud, eyes tracing the rising figure of Beltharion as he disappeared into the thinning upper sky. Her chest ached with awe, relief, and a strange, profound joy. We showed him that life can be worth saving, that trust can be earned, that even the last of a species can rise again. Tala's voice broke the reverent silence. "Observation, long-term